Chelsea versus Everton preview. We're going to look today at how Chelsea can break down Everton, a team that have only scored in one of their last 6 games, and that was a 4-0 win against Wolves. In the other 5 Premier League games, apart from that game, they have failed to score. So, how have Everton sort of struggled to be toothless? Why is it that they sit and defend in the way they do to the point where it sort of abrupts their attack? We're going to speak about all of that. And how can Chelsea manipulate their way through that Everton low block, which is going to be stubborn? We've seen it against Arsenal. If I just quickly look at the results, you have 0-0 against Arsenal, you have 0-0 against Brentford, you have 0-0 against West Ham, and then you have a 4-0 win against Wolves, like I said, 4-0 loss against Man United, and a 1-0 loss against Everton. So even in those games, they've only conceded 5 goals in those 6 games. So that low block is really apparent. A lot of 0-0s in there, and even the 1-0 against Southampton, a close game. I think they nearly drew that 1-1 at the end. But this is going to be a tough game, and if you thought that the Brentford low block was hard to break down, this one is going to be even harder. So we're going to speak about that today. They sort of set up in this 4-4-2, but it can look almost like a 4-4-1-1. And this being Doucouré and this being Calvert-Lewin is an important part of the press. As always, we're going to talk about the winger coverage and how they sort of look to quite often drop deep and sort of double up in these wide areas. So we're going to speak about that and how Chelsea can sort of manipulate those wingers in order to find these players in 1v1s rather than 2v1s and force them away from the sideline, essentially. So, how are Chelsea going to set up? This is basically what I've got on screen. I did have Lavia in the team. If Lavia was fit, now it has come out. I'll try to flash it up on screen now. I saw like a tweet from Maresca's press conference. Lavia is unlikely to be available this Sunday, which is a massive shame because I do think having those 3 players in the middle of the park for Everton, which is usually Doucouré, Gana Gueye, and Mangala, 3 players that are very defensively inclined in the sense of they'll get around, they'll get stuck in, and they'll win their duels. Even Doucouré plays in these higher positions. He gets about and he will stick a leg in. He's not afraid to get stuck in. So it would have been nice to have that little extra protection with Lavia and invert Caicedo in from right back for this game to essentially have Lavia, Caicedo, and Enzo all together. But that doesn't look like it's going to be a case that can be had. Therefore, Vega is probably going to come into the team, right? Even though he played midweek. How do I think we're going to set up? Now, I'll try and put in, like I have been doing, the splits where I sort of go through a little screenshot and then carry on with the tactics board. I'll try and sort of edit that afterwards. But we'll speak through the tactics. I do think that we're going to see more of that sort of 2 splitting at the back here between Calvert-Lewin up front. I then think Caicedo will sort of be in that pivot on his own. Enzo will push forward and Palmer, again, to create that sort of usual line of 5 that we see across the front. I then think that these 2, both players, are going to almost form that diamond. They could come in really narrow at times. They could stretch with the wingers. I think the idea of these players coming inside is going to be to drag these players infield, okay, and to make it really compact in the middle. And then even when Dominic Calvert-Lewin's trying to sort of front off the Caicedo, so even if it's like this, you can see how compact these lines are. This sort of 6, this little hexagon shape here. So I do think that these 2 players are going to be really important, and that's why I think both are going to be inverting into those central areas, allowing these 2 to just split, and essentially that build up to be, if we just get the line, to essentially be this diamond here versus that front 2, Doucouré and Calvert-Lewin of Everton. Here you can see that build up with a 4v2 at the back for Bournemouth against Everton's 2-man front pressure with the midfield 4 stepped slightly off. This allows them to build up from the back, look to move Calvert-Lewin and whoever the other one is, so it could have been McNeil at the time, but it could be Doucouré against Chelsea, move them side to side and try and find that access into that single pivot. The funny thing about this is this midfield line from Everton is actually more aggressive because, as you can see, Bournemouth have pretty much vacated this area. If Chelsea look to do something like this, the odds are that midfield line will drop off with them rather than staying high and advanced. Then these 2 pinning these 2, and then most likely these guys going man for man as well. This will obviously mean that the best ports of call, if you're looking at that 4 in the middle and you're thinking they're all man marked, Doucouré is probably going to be looking so almost like these players will, if the presser goes here, he'll have to drop off, he'll have to go here. Vice versa, if he goes out here, he'll go into here, and he will sort of front off Caicedo and look to sort of play in that shadow in case Caicedo receives the ball. But if you look at where all the coverage is, the two main sort of areas that you can get through this press or this pressure is by one of these players arriving in front to receive the ball, say from tossing, and then bounce it back into this space for Casado to move on to. That's sort of the early phase progression, how you can get through. That's the first sort of way. The other way, which was used quite a bit against, I think it was against Arsenal. Arsenal uses quite a bit of Erdegaard, and this is why I think the movement of Gusto is going to be important. Is if Gusto can drag this man in here, this pocket yet again becomes the receiving pocket. Neto can drop in to receive the ball and have that access really sort of available, streamlined for him to then get at his man 1v1. Also, if Neto goes higher up and pins him, Palmer can swoop into this space, and that's going to be his opportunity to get on the ball.
Here's the exact example I was talking about. As you can see, Erdegaard dropped into that pocket to begin with to attach to the winger, which then means that when he makes that movement inside, he takes that winger with him away at the time to open up that passing lane nice and cleanly into Saka to give him that 1v1. Now, not only is Saka in a 1v1, but he's also took away that extra bit of support so that he's not in that 2v1 that we spoke about earlier with those double coverage from the winger. And even the centre-back is being drawn away by Havertz in the middle, giving Saka the chance to create on either side and use that variance of his game.
That could see Jackson drop into here. That could see Gusto sort of carry on his run and look to attack this space. There's a lot of options. Jackson can make the runs in behind, where Palmer can sort of look to play that ball. There's many options, but the point is those spaces, and that's the same for both sides, by the way. It's not just this side with Gusto. If Vega can, if I just move these back, if Vega can drag his man infield, again, attaches from a sort of wide position, drifts infield, pins him. Once again, that ball is now on. Vega's blocking sort of the access of this winger to be able to jump out. So that ball can go into Sancho. He can go 1v1 and manipulate the ball and bring it forward. Enzo can make a run into this gap. And then again, same again, if Sancho pins high, Vega comes inside, Enzo can spin out, and then he can receive the ball in here. And we know what Enzo can do with his long-range passing. If they're shuffling over at this point, that could be the perfect opportunity for Enzo to hit the switch. And one of either Gusto or even Neto can attack that side of the pitch. So that's going to be the two ways of sort of looking to manipulate this team. I do expect the shape to be something like this in terms of, I say a diamond, but it's more of sort of this sort of shape of 5 here. And then you sort of have the freedom of Enzo and Palmer between the lines to try and manipulate these two DMs essentially and sort of drag them out of position. And then Jackson sort of playing on the two centre-backs as expected, and the two wingers pinning the fullbacks. So that's how I expect the deeper progressions to be. Something that we're probably going to see a lot of again is, and again, I'll try and show you in this video, there's a lot of times where Everton will drop really deep into these areas. If we look here, like it will literally look like something like this. Like you've got double coverage on both sides. You've got the two DMs, you've got Decore, and then you've sort of just left these two players sort of like something like this, maybe. And you've got Jackson, you've got Enzo, you've got Palmer, and everything pushes up, okay? This is what we saw against Brentford. You saw the wingers really nice and high. This is where you're expecting to see not only Vega pushed up into here, not only Gusto pushed up into here, not only Casado pushed up into there, but also these two players ready to jump. Now, this is where things could be different because you probably don't need this 2v1, but it is Calvert-Lewin. So the one thing you have to be careful of, and one thing that Everton do, is that Calvert-Lewin will sort of stay between these defenders and he will just look to be the outball. So that ball, even if these players are really dropped off deep and Decore is literally on the line, you've got basically 9 men behind the ball or 9 men in and around that box. The out ball is still going to be Calvert-Lewin. So at times you want both of these players there, just so that if Tosin is the one attacking the ball, Colwill can sweep. Vice versa, if Colwill attacks, Tosin can sweep over to here. And winning those sort of aerial duels and just making sure that Calvert-Lewin can't make it stick is what is really important, because if he makes it stick, that's how Everton get out. Whereas if he can't make it stick essentially between this triangle pressure that he'll be under on his own, then that's how Chelsea sustain pressure. And if you look at the shape, how you sort of swarm that area of the pitch, these players are blocked. They can't get out. So their only hope is hitting that out ball there, or somehow trying to carry from these areas into here, which again, you have coverage both sides. So important to sustain pressure, and I think that's why we're going to miss Cucurella quite a bit in terms of his ability. I could draw arrows literally everywhere for Cucurella. Like he can cover ground at an outrageous speed, intensity, tenacity, and I think we're actually really going to miss him. I know it's only Everton, and people are sort of almost thankful that it's only against Everton, but I think if you actually look at how the game plan is going to be, and you look how a lot of the game is going to be played in one. Oh, that's a terrible arrow line. It's going to be played. A lot of it's going to be played in one half of the pitch. Right?
Here's the example of exactly that. Look how deep all of these Everton bodies are behind the ball, looking to play in their half and then try and hit Calvert-Lewin as their outlet. Just look at this example here. You've got Everton have 9 bodies in the box around Arsenal. Every time that ball tries to come out, if it doesn't hit Calvert-Lewin from a long ball, Arsenal were just able to step in and sustain pressure throughout the entirety of the game. So how can Chelsea benefit from pinning Everton back in this low block and sustaining pressure throughout the game like they did against Brentford? Let's have a look on the tactics board.
This is one of those games where missing Cucurella could actually be quite a big miss, actually, I think, because of that and his ability to sort of sweep things up in these areas to allow Chelsea to sustain pressure. The last thing I want to speak about is, again, that volume of sort of crossing and passing, because I think some things that get sort of lost in translation is Chelsea are going to continue to cross the ball, and I expect the actual crossing and sort of shot volume to be up again in this sort of game. And people might think that that's not the best idea because Everton, they've got better box defenders. Jackson's not as good in the area, say a Branthwaite and a Tarkowski, for example. But the idea isn't always to win that first ball. When you've got such a ridiculous net here, pressing players in, and you've got Palmer attacking this space, Enzo attacking this space, and then these guys can converge in as well. What you end up doing by putting the ball into the box is they have to clear it. And because they're all in such close proximity and they're just trying to get anything on it, that's when things can drop into spaces. And it's actually the second ball that is where you're going to create more of your chances. The chance will often, yes, you'll create chances from, say, net opening an in-swinger and somebody attacking it. But it's actually when one of these players clears the ball and it drops to a little bit short to Enzo and he can quickly recycle it to Jackson. This man is now out of position. So for a brief second, if you can then knit that together with the second ball, that's when you get open shots. And that's when you sort of open up the pitch to make those shots. So those second balls are even more important against these sides that look to play a low block. And that's why you up the volume, not because you're expecting to score directly from across, but because you're looking to cause mistakes in a compact area where they can't get out to the point where it is inevitable that something's going to drop your way. And that's where your chance is going to come from. So I do expect that to be exactly the same against Everton, similarly as it was against Brentford, as I tried to explain in that game. Let's hope that this line of pressure can do it. I think it will. I think Vega was actually really good on Thursday in terms of sustaining pressure and being aggressive. But we all know Cucurella, that's something he does immensely well. So Vega's going to have a big sort of hole to step into in terms of his role in this game. Casado, as usual, he will be very important as well, going either way. And I trust Gusto in that exact role too, to do the same thing, to recover at speed and to win the ball back in these sort of tight areas to help Chelsea push forward. So let me know what you think of the game plan that I've sort of drew up here. Any questions, do let me know, and I'll try to get round to them before Sunday's kickoff. Drop a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.